Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the intro. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to Maynard Casterison's Nonprofit Education Series for the second quarter. Topic today is data-driven decisions, powering nonprofit growth with data and dashboards. So we're happy to have you here. A few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and everyone will be muted, but if you have any questions along the way, please type them in the chat and we will have some time at the end to go through some of those questions. We are offering 1.2 CPE credits for this webinar. Throughout today's webinar, you will see periodic polls pop up on the screen. Please select the circle and click submit. To qualify for CPE, attendees must participate in at least 4 of the 5 polls and attend the webinar for at least 50 minutes. For participants who meet, actually 60 minutes for the 1.2 credits. For participants who meet CPE requirements, we will issue certificates via our learning management system to the email that you use to register for this webinar. So if you have any questions with CPE or the issues with the polls, please reach out to Sydney Sparks in the chat field. She is on this webinar. Today, I would like to introduce you to our speakers. We have Jeff Allen and Wes Salisbury here with us today. Jeff is a principal on our consulting team here at Maynard with over 18 years of experience. And Wes is a senior manager with our technology team here at Maynard with near 10 years of experience. And I think both of them together will give us a great presentation today. So thank you both, Jeff and Wes, for your time today. With that, I would like to turn it over to Jeff to start the presentation.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Brandy. And we will go ahead and get started. Looks like the first CPE poll might be coming up there for everybody. So yes, let's go ahead and get started. So Brandy, like you said, thank you. My name is Jeff Allen. I am a partner in our consulting team here at Maynard Casterison. Been working many, many years in lots of different pieces of accounting. I actually spent a good chunk of years actually working in private industry as a corporate controller. We worked with a lot of tools inside the data analytics area. And so we're share some of those war stories here with you today too. And Wes Salisbury also joining me. I'll let him introduce himself. He'll talk here throughout the presentation. But Wes, you want to go ahead and say just something cool about yourself?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. Yep. So like Jeff was saying, my name is Wes Salisbury. I'm a consultant in our technology department. Mostly a big part of what I've been doing the last, we'll round up to around a decade. I've been implementing Sage Intacct, which is an accounting package, which looking at the attendee list, some of you are already on. So chances are I've already worked pretty closely with some of you over the years. But I have also done work with data analytics and tools like Power BI. I've done work in budgeting. So, and I've also worked with integrations. So, um, yeah, we're excited to talk about data and how data can be used to drive nonprofit growth. And I'll pass it back to Jeff.
All right, so Wes and I agreed ahead of time. We're going to try to keep this thing not data nerdy, so hopefully we don't get too nerdy on you. But anyways, you'll enjoy it just the same. But let's take a real quick peek here, just our agenda here for what we're looking to accomplish in this short webinar here. We're going to take a look at the current landscape and the data, and we're going to go ahead and define what data analytics is. It's a really big term, and a lot of people misunderstand what data analytics actually is and what it is not. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a peek at that today. We're going to walk through how data analytics and visualization help tell the story and really the importance of it. We're going to make sure we point out today, just like what we had advertised in the handout, that dashboards as the go-to resource for better decision making. And then we're going to take a look at a few different dashboards as well. Les is going to showcase a few different options for us. One of them being Power BI, which is of course becoming a very well accepted data analytics tool in the market. And then we'll save a few minutes at the end just for some Q&A. So hopefully we'll be able to take care of everybody's questions today. And if you don't, well, we can certainly reach out to us afterwards as well. Let's take a look at the current landscape right now inside the data analytics area. Very, very interesting statistics right now coming out of industry. 91.9%. It's almost that's getting close to almost everybody of organizations achieved measurable value from data analytics investments in 2023. So, you know, all the naysayers that think this is a passing thing, it's just not. Data is here, data analytics is here to stay, and it's proving that it is providing value to those that are willing to invest in it. 3 out of 5 organizations are using data analytics to drive organization innovation, meaning they're using it to help change the way that they're doing things, which is really amazing. That's 60% of organizations. 50%, 56% of data leaders actually plan on increasing their budgets. Over half of folks are planning to actually increase the budget. And what's really, really cool is that finance and accounting departments are considered the most data-driven within organizations, meaning that they are the most susceptible to doing well and gaining off of the employment of data analytics as tools within their organizations. So all of us that are, on the call today that are in a finance and accounting, especially, this can affect us in a certain way. What is data analytics? We tried to boil this down here into one of the most easily to understand type of analogies because so many misconceptions out there what it is. Simply put, data analytics is a process of inspecting data, cleansing data, or modeling data, those 3 things, with the goal of discovering useful information, informing conclusions, or supporting decision making. That's really it. That's really it in a nutshell. So when we talk about maybe taking a bunch of PDF files or something and turning them into something that's more legible, that would be cleansing data because we want to be able to discover useful information out of it. That's data analytics. Now you think of that and you're like, well, that doesn't need some fancy tool. A lot of times data analytics does not need some sort of fancy tool in order to meet the definition of what data analytics is. And some of the tools that we'll talk about as well are actually basic things in our toolbox like Excel. And so it's really, really important to understand what data analytics is and what it isn't. In the world of AI, a lot of people are starting to think that AI and data analytics are the same thing, and they are not. They definitely are not. Data analytics is really kind of a process of taking what we already have and turning it into something, where AI is something much more of taking information and having it do something for us. So it's important to know the difference as we talk about so we can be educated. If we take a look at information here and we really want to start developing meaningful dashboards and reports, it's important that we understand the different pieces that come with it. Use this triangle as an example here, really. We have data. We have a lot of data, tons of data, general ledgers, membership databases, all over the place. We have tons and tons of data. And as we move up that pyramid, we really are trying to narrow down that data into information that's useful and then to gain insight from that data as well. And really, it's that insight. This is the story that we want to be able to be telling when we're dashboarding. We could obviously just give somebody this huge CSV file, this huge PDF file, and that would be just giving them the data. But obviously, we want to narrow that down so we can help tell the story and make that data useful for decision makers and for those that are looking at things. So as we look into things, Wes, did you have a question or want to say something there?
Just before you, I'll go ahead and say my question. Before you slide over into the next slide,
Sure.
just pause and I just have something to add.
Okay. So yeah, absolutely. So we're going to go ahead and I'm actually moving over to the next slide right now. So you're good.
Perfect timing. So I just you don't need a slide, but you don't need to go back to the slide earlier. But kind of part of the data analytics process, I kind of wanted to add kind of like a precursor to the first step there. So the first step was inspecting data. Sometimes an optional first step is the automation or the integration of retrieving data. Because when you inspect data, we think about going and grabbing a report, like downloading an Excel file or a CSV file or something like that from all these different systems. But if part of your data analytics process is having up-to-date data at all times, there's sometimes a step you want to do prior to use programs to automatically retrieve the data you're looking for, right? So maybe going up to a website and extracting, I'm just going to use stock prices as an example, run a script to go up and grab stock prices, for example. Maybe not, maybe even if it's just to see what stocks are for the day, who knows? And maybe you want to download inflation data and stuff like that for past periods. There's some pretty powerful options that are pretty simply deployed to go and get the data you need automatically and get it to the place where it needs to. So that way, when you do your data analytics process, you're working with the most up-to-date data, and you don't need a lot of human intervention to grab it. Essentially, is
Yeah.
what I just wanted to add.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Wes, for adding that. That's really cool. Yeah, not all data has to come from a PDF or it has to come from Excel, or you don't even have to download it to one of those sort of mediums right away. You can connect right into data a lot of times seamlessly, which is really the best way to do it because it's always real time. So thank you, Wes.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Oh, I was
So
just gonna.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off there, Jeff. I was just looking at the chat. Looks like we had a attendee mention. I'd also suggest another step even before automation, building a data inventory of which data you need and from what sources.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, definitely. Especially when you build complicated data models, you're dependent on data from a lot of different sources, and you got to make sure that you have everything documented about what you need, when you need it, because that way if something goes wrong or if you need to debug something, you know where to go and get it.
Excellent. Yep. Thank you for adding that. So as we move forward here, just taking a look at dashboarding, we're going to go through some best practices. Some of these may seem like, oh, that makes super sense, or that seems like common sense, but we've all kind of gotten to the point where we've seen a dashboard or a visual of some sort, and we've thought, this, I still don't know what's going on. And so just as kind of some reminders here of some real important kind of do's and don'ts, basically, as we build dashboards and reporting, we do want to make sure that we're consistent. We want to make sure that the information we're reporting on is consistent and that our dashboards aren't constantly changing in an influx and making it more confusing for the readers to understand what's going on. We want to make sure that we're being transparent. A lot of times we can obviously manipulate data to maybe tell a story that is beneficial to certain people or to ourselves, and we just want to make sure that all the information that's done is transparent. Reporting on predefined key performance indicators. If the organization needs to know something every single month, those are the things we need to make sure that we bring to our team. Bringing something new or unique or out of the box that doesn't make sense to what we're doing is not very helpful. And obviously showing trends and expectations is critical. That is what's so important about insight is oftentimes it's great to know where we've been, but we want to know where we're going. And so it really making sure if we can bring some trends into things, that is helpful. Obviously, we want to make sure that we don't report in just simple piecemeal, that we don't have just only little bits and pieces that don't really help us get to the story. Frequently changing the formats is exhausting to the audience, so making sure that we're staying consistent with what that dashboard looks like. The information may be changing, but the format and the look usually should not. Keeping clutter out. We'll have an example here in a minute of a really, really busy dashboard which has really great information on it, but there's so much on it that it's hard to understand. Dwelling on the details, this is often, if you're an accountant, you tend to do a good job of dwelling on the details. And so it's important that we kind of move beyond just the details and get to the big picture. And of course, we don't want to just cater to the micromanager. We want to make sure that the report is usable for all those involved. So let's take a look here at a dashboard here, a funding source. This is actually a dashboard. I mean, many of us would say that's just a pie chart. And that is true. It is, but it is also in the simplest form, it's a dashboard, right? We can see our funding sources there and we can see the colors. But while they're pretty, they're also not very effective. A pie chart doesn't necessarily always tell us everything that we need to know. So we can say, oh, that's great. We're funded by mostly it looks like training dues and sponsorships, but that doesn't necessarily give us the insight. This is good information. We've taken data and we're moving up the triangle. But let's think about it maybe moving a little bit further into that insight category. And as we do that, let's think about a bar chart, right? So bar charts they're much easier to read. And rather than trying to think like, oh, it looks like a third, it looks like this or that, it clearly shows us dues is the biggest, then training, then sponsorship, then events. Very, very helpful and much easier to understand for those that are reading the information. Now, let's take it maybe just one step further and let's add some narrative and a little bit of context. So if we put a note, literally just go and put a note right out there, our revenue model has changed significantly over the last 5 years. And we can easily see we can see fiscal 2017 and fiscal 2012. And as an example, and we can see over that 5-year window that the dues, while it still remains the largest category of our revenue, it is shifting. And we can see that while dues has come down as our main revenues, not as our main, but it has shifted down, while training and sponsorship and events are shifting up. And so this helps us to more easily see what's going on, much more so than just that pie chart. It didn't have any insight. It was a snapshot in time, and here we have a little bit more context of what's going on. And using words can sometimes help with that. If we move on here to our next kind of best practices, here's a really, really busy dashboard, right? We've got a lot of percentages, we've got different categories. Oh, we have things summarized on here by month, and then we throw some graphs on the bottom. And so while this information is really good, it's a lot to take in, especially on one viewer. And so you're looking at it and you're thinking, oh, this is what's going on. You're trying to move along. And that's not the point of a dashboard, right? A dashboard should be something that's very simple, much easier to read. And so let's take some of this information, let's turn it into something that looks maybe more like this. And you can see that we've got more membership information here going on. It's nice and clear. And we have different tiles. Each one of those squares, that's the technical term, is a tile. A different tile here showing different things. And it just makes it easier to read and easier to understand. Make sure that the labels are clear when we're building dashboards, and just so that people can make sure they understand what they are looking at. Okay. Here's an example of another dashboard, nice and cleaned up. It actually has some of that more granular detail there in that bottom right tile, but this one is much easier on the eye, right? And it's showing us a nice running chart of different things actually all in one spot, which is interesting and really, real helpful. So in that first tile in the upper left, we can see we have member count, those that are dropping, and the new members. We have in the upper right tile information saying dues by our marketplace code, so we can see easily that associations is our biggest one. We can look at annual dues by our membership level, whether they're platinum, silver, gold, bronze, titanium, in that lower left tile. And then, of course, we can see the dues by a month, and we can actually see the dollar amount as well. And here we have multiple years as well, shown by a month, and it's nice and tidy and it's easy to see, but it can answer 4 questions in one screen very, very easily. And that's very, very helpful for obviously any of us. And I think we'd all agree we'd rather look at this than at the previous example as well. Here's an example of a dashboard here. This is just an example of something very simple, very uncluttered. We have information on the person who to contact. We know the engagement score, and we can see an engagement history in this case. This is based on posting for different types of like a social media type posting, and it's really, really intuitive, and which is helpful. All right, so when we cannot avoid it, here's an example, and I know this is very small on everyone's screen. Lots going on that screen again, right? Lots of data showing up. It looks like a Excel, it basically just looks like we have an Excel file that's been put up on the screen, right? And but what's different about this one is we've used color indicators and filters to kind of point out where there's something that needs attention. So rather than just saying, boom, here's the whole thing, we can highlight in green, hey, these are areas that we're doing well on, and boom, in red, these are areas that need attention immediately. And so we can focus in on those, and it draws our attention to those areas rather than having to have us spend unnecessary time going through and trying to identify exactly what those are. And so that's again really helpful if we have to show a lot of the data still. Here's another example. Here's another example of a dashboard where we're just reviewing KPIs on a regular basis. So like Wes had said, if we can get linked into that data rather than static data, but actual data, this information can go straight to those tables, to those databases that host those tables, and can constantly be refreshing. Maybe it's on a weekly, daily, hourly, depends completely on how often we would like to see that refreshed. And we can keep track of things like membership count, renewals, our average fee per members, new members, volunteer hours. Very, very interesting. So again, we can answer many questions in one nice, simple screen. which is always helpful. I kind of give you an example here of a kind of a dashboard that I had built at one time. So when I was in private industry, I was actually working at a for-profit in this particular case, but we had about 125 sales reps all across the country. And we would constantly hear that I didn't know that I was about to lose a product sale, meaning maybe the product had already been being sold by the rep for years, and then they switched to a competitor. And so we started to think there's got to be something in that data that maybe gives us an indicator of when this particular event could is about to happen. And so we looked into some of the data from past things, and we could see, all right, here's sales taking place every single month. And then we would see a spike in sales, and like an almost an abnormal spike in sales for that particular product. And then the spike was almost always followed by we would go to zero. And so what we could do, while it was not necessarily as great as knowing months and months in advance, as soon as we would hit the spike in the data on a real-time basis, the sales rep would then be able to get an indicator that said, listen, you need to contact your customer because it's possible, not entirely, but it is possible that you're about to lose this account on that product. And so they could reach out and they could intervene rather than waiting to be told. They could be, hey, is everything okay? And then try to answer some of those questions before the sale got lost. We were able to automate that out so that, an email would go out with their report for that client, and it would actually have a little red flag that would show up on their data, on the data graph, and they could see that maybe it's time to do something here. So that was a really good one. We've done other projects too, where we've been able to go and we can show hours. So there's lots of different times where we need to track hours compared to some sort of a budget, right? And we can build that, and we can put like a budget right next to an actual tracker, and we can see how well we're doing compared to something like that. We've done that before for folks. We've written financial statements. Sometimes it's not usually the best idea to use dashboarding as a way to write financial statements, but it absolutely can be done. So we can get a statement of financial position and a statement of support. They can be built inside of some of these tools as well. Lots of different ways. Use them as an invoice. So again, working in industry, I'd get a lot of invoices would come in every day, and we certainly just didn't have time. We have AP that's working on doing processing those invoices, and then we get a report the next day that says, this was the information entered into the system. Please review it. And so I'd get an email. I'd be able to see everything that went in one spot, and I could say, what's that? Or this looks like an issue. And then we could go investigate long before payment ever went out to somebody. So there's just so many different ways that dashboards can be utilized and used. And so I'm just trying to kind of provide some of those examples off the cuff as well here. But this time I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn this over to Wes. He actually has it's tool times for anybody that remembers the old home improvement era from the 90s there. It's tool time. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the tools that can be used. And Wes has some live data that he's going to go ahead and he's going to share with us at this time. So Wes, go ahead.
Yep, absolutely. So before I go ahead and I'll go ahead and share my screen, and then I'll just speak to what I was going to talk about. So while I'm sharing, I guess first of all, can you see my screen right now? It should be CFO dashboard. Yep. All right. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and talk about this in a moment, but what I wanted to add on, in addition to what you just were talking about, I don't have any comments on home improvement because I don't actually recall like all this stuff. I remember
I dated myself. Oh, geez.
It's okay. I'm aware of I remember when it was on TV, but I just don't ever remember watching an episode of it. And I know that Tim Allen was in it, and I think that blonde haired guy that was in everything in the 90s. I think Jonathan Taylor Thomas is his name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have some recollection of it. But anyway, the thing I wanted to comment on is the cool thing about data analytics and dashboarding is that it really helps with the timeliness of data, right? When we think of financial reports, we sometimes think of those as like kind of looking in the past, like, what happened in the past month, because, your financial close may not happen for a few weeks into the new month, depending on how long it takes you. But when you truly automate your data analytics process and build out these nice dashboards that are getting live data feeds in, you can see issues immediately and rectify them. So the example I wanted to add is like imagine you're operating a restaurant or a coffee shop or something like that. And one of the things that you want to monitor on a daily basis or a frequent basis is your labor percentage. Like what percentage of your labor or what percentage of your sales is your labor? And you really want to, it's a major metric in those industries to make sure that's not getting too high. Because if that's getting too high, it means that you're not selling enough product to warrant the amount of staff you have. So that allows you to kind of adjust scheduling, maybe, decide, you can make decisions from there. But again, it's decision support, right? It helps you support decisions on, operations and staffing. But anyway, that was just a little example I wanted to give. But like what Jeff was saying is, yeah, we have tools. There's a lot of tools that you can use in data analytics. And the thing about it is you don't need anything too fancy, and really use whatever tools you're comfortable with, because like I have examples that's going to show Power BI, a Microsoft product, as well as Sage Intacct, which is an accounting system that some of you are probably already on. But you can do data analytics in Excel. You can do data analytics in Access. You can do data analytics in SQL. It's really whatever flavor of whatever tools you prefer, you can go ahead and use. As long as it gets you to your end result, it doesn't really matter too much. But with that being said, some tools are going to have better structure for data analytics than others. For example, having something like Power BI, having a complicated data model built out in Power BI is probably going to be a lot more efficient and easier to manage than something like Excel, where you have like all these tabs, all these separate workbooks that, you all have to link in. I'll pause for a moment because just a reminder, there is a CPE poll up on the screen right now. So just make sure you're answering that if you're still with us. Anyway, without further ado, I'm currently logged into the accounting system Sage Intacct. So this may already look familiar to you all. But in accounting systems like Sage Intacct, usually what you can do is you can build out these little performance cards or these KPIs up here, maybe put them near the top. In this particular example, I have some calculations for program efficiency, fundraising expenses as a percentage of total expenses, same with admin expenses. And all these things you can kind of track versus prior periods, right? So for fundraising expenses, I can see that I'm at 4% this year, but I'm trending down 1% versus the prior year. So all that's good stuff. But even then I can, but just to add on to that, you can track things like revenue compared to prior year, expenses compared to prior year. And the other thing you can do is you can kind of mix together financial data with non-financial data. So like the one I'm hovering over right now is cost per hour of learning. This is one where we take like a cost numerator and divide it by a statistical non-financial denominator. And we come up with an average cost per hour of learning, which of course we can then track versus prior year and all those good things.
Hey, Wes, I got a question
yeah.
for you. It seems like sometimes like that information, like we're looking here at an accounting system, but how would we keep track of like hours and bring that in? It seems like that data wouldn't be like readily available. Is there like kind of a way that that can be done, or do we got to update that KPI like manually?
Great question. So in the terms of an accounting system like Sage Intacct, you can integrate data into it pretty well. So just to use some examples here, restaurants do a lot of this, so I'm going to use restaurants as an example. So when we import like if we build out a process that imports like sales data from your POS system for restaurants, usually that data is also going to have hours as well. There's going to be hours in there as well. So we'll import that data into the accounting software as a statistical like amount. So every day you bring in activity from the prior day and you get a list of like, hey, this is how many regular hours were expended at each one of these store numbers. This is the amount of overtime booked at each store, double time, stuff like that. So if you're integrating that data into your accounting system, you can then use it in all these calculations. If you're not super if it's not super easy to integrate into your accounting system, if you build out your metrics in something like Power BI, if you have like just like some type of file out there, like any type of file that has your hours on it, you can just build that into your data model, and then you can just build these calculations based on that. So it depends on what tool you're using, essentially.
Right. Yeah, I think that's kind of the point that I was trying to draw out to really is that, whether you have an accounting system or Power BI, like we can bring information together from multiple different sources into one spot. And that's really the power that comes behind some of these dashboards.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. And you can do that with accounting systems, but that's kind of where the power in Power BI and other similar tools come into play. In tools like Power BI, you can pretty much build a completely custom data model. You can have as many different data sources as you want. You can build all these custom calculations. Accounting systems can sometimes be a little bit more limiting when it comes to like what it lets you do when building a data model. But anyway, you have options. Um, they're all good options. But yeah, as I go through here, and again, this isn't a product demo of Sage Intacct, but just going through some of the things you can build out in a dashboard. You can build out these neat little waterfall graphs and kind of an example similar to what you were showing earlier, Jeff. You can just drop just financial reports with up-to-date data on it. Now, these may not be published. This may not be the same as like a published financial, but if one of the things you're doing is tracking your expenditures year to date, you want to make sure you're staying within compliance. You can build a little report like this, where I can see for personnel expenditures or personnel expenses, I have remaining budget left, but for professional fees, I'm over budget. And when you build out dashboards properly, you can also get back to the originating data, like the individual transaction lines that make up that activity. So the other side of data analytics is it's about getting the data, cleansing it, and getting it into a nice modeled format for a human to digest. But also it allows you to click in and see the individual line details as well to perform further investigation.
Wes, I can't necessarily speak for all the accounting. I guess this question to you is, um, when you're in the accounting system like this, do some accounting systems like really help? Like, are there like already kind of built-in tools to help people build the dashboards? Like, if you're not like a dashboard expert, like, or is this something that like we got to hire someone to help custom set up this particular type of dashboard that would be residing in an accounting system? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. So for the most part, if and I'm speaking from my frame of reference as a servicer of
Absolutely.
mid-market.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a servicer of mid-market accounting systems, particularly cloud-based ones. Most of the ones on the market right now, again, I'm professionally qualified in Sage Intacct, but in general, most of them have built-in dashboarding capabilities, and they're usually designed for the finance team to administer them. So in this particular case, this Sage Intacct dashboard, a finance user who doesn't necessarily have technology, IT background could build this.
Cool.
Because it's all an exercise of like, this is what I define fundraising expenses as, this is what I define revenue as, this is what I define expenses as. It's pretty simple stuff, and it's actually, from a complexity standpoint, it's pretty similar to what people are used to inside of Excel.
Mhm.
With that,
But
it's going to be a
but it's
nice step.
linked, yeah, but it's linked into that real-time data, which is nice running right out of the accounting system. So
Yep, absolutely. It's all linked. It's all linked to live data. So that's actually a great segue into kind of the other side of that coin I wanted to mention. So where I'm in right now is I put together a little dashboard here. This uses Microsoft Power BI. So uh, Microsoft Power BI, it's the point with Power BI is that where I was just talking about like Intacct and other mid-market accounting tools, that usually allows it's easier for like financial folks, like purely financial, like accounting people, to put something together in there. Power BI is a little bit more, I'm going to call robust, but part of that extra power means there's more technical stuff you got to know. With Power BI, I mean, you can build some simple graphs and things like that um, uh, in it without necessarily IT background, but Power BI is also a lot more intensive when it comes to formulas. There's the whole programming language, DAX, DAX coding, that drives all these behaviors. But anyway, I wanted to segue into this dashboard because this is just a little report that shows something in Power BI. So again, this is a pretty simple dashboard. Maybe in this situation, this organization maybe is a little bit more concerned about liquidity at the moment. So of course, you can build out different dashboards for different things, but maybe this one just would care about liquidity. You can build out neat little trends and some trends and projections when it comes to, in this case, this is a liabilities to assets ratio. So over time, we can see, okay, this lighter bar is my assets. This darker blue bar is liabilities. But this orange line, this is our currently calculated liabilities over assets ratio. And I have this little pink dotted line that represents the industry ratio. So you can go year by year and kind of see how you've trended year to year and how you're looking for your current year. So again, it's a good way for you to just double check and make sure that you're staying fairly liquid, observing your assets versus your liabilities, stuff like that.
Hey Wes, where would you get information like that? Like industry data. I know that a lot of maybe clearly we're talking about nonprofits and maybe ASAE is a good source, but could you think of anything else like a really good source to get some of those ratios? Because this is obviously really cool because now we're taking information that's in our system and we're comparing it to a benchmark to know how we're doing compared to others. Do you have any thoughts on that maybe?
I don't have any like particular like names of organizations outside of ASAE.
Mm-hmm.
There's sources out there. There's sources out there. I think a lot of these organizations that have this benchmarking data, I think a lot of them are subscription based, so you're probably going to have to pay to get access to it. But outside of ASAE, I don't really have a great
Yeah.
I don't really have a great professional I don't have a great professional opinion on it at this point.
Okay. Yeah, then ASAE is a good one to go to utilize then.
Yep, ASAE is good. There was this. I don't know it off the top of my head right now. It's a shame I don't remember it. There's another major one that's specific for not-for-profits. It's just the name escapes me right now.
Okay.
I think it's GuideStar, I want to say.
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Yep.
Yeah, GuideStar. Okay, yeah. So GuideStar is a big one. There's a lot of information out there. But anyway, so outside of that, yeah, you can get good benchmarks from GuideStar and other places. In this particular dashboard, I have a little this little tile right here just shows me my year-to-year operating excess and my deficit. This orange line represents my net, pretty much my net change in net assets over the year, and pretty much my target is just to, I just have this baseline for 0. So I want to see if we're breaking even or if we're below or not. It looks like in 2022, maybe we had some crossover data happening here where maybe some stuff that may have been in 2022 got accounted in 2023. But anyway, finally, and by the way, I should also note, Power BI has pre-built connections to pretty much a lot of systems, not every single system, but this particular Microsoft Power BI dashboard is hooked into another Microsoft product. It's an accounting system called Dynamics Business Central, which is another software we serve. That's a software that's gaining traction in all industries right now. And this was pretty much just like a quick refresh that said like, grab new data, update my visuals. And again, it's in the interest of keeping data up to date and making sure you have the most recent data at your fingertips at all times. This is a great tool for it. And then off to the right here again, it's just we care about liquidity a lot. So we want to see what our recent cash activity has been for the last few days, trailing 7 days, which ends up being 5 business days, but shows kind of what our net cash outflows or inflows are in that period, as well as our current cash balance, our accounts receivable, and our accounts payable. So, we can figure out what we reasonably expect to pay or receive in the next, 30 days or whatnot. Looks like the accounting system is saying we have a negative cash balance. So that just may prompt us to say, hey, maybe we ought to look at what our balance actually is. We may be missing some activity.
Or we have a real problem.
Exactly. You could be severely overdrawn on your account, which of course you don't want to happen. But again, you have up-to-date data. It's at your fingertips. It's pulling directly from your accounting system. It doesn't require a human to manipulate any data to build this for you. In Power BI, all it is just you hit a refresh button or you schedule a refresh every hour or something like that. Brings in new data, updates everything, and populates it out. And this is just a simple example. You can get really fancy with Power BI, and you can build in different pages into your reports to go from liquidity to profitability to even investment performance, stuff like that.
So in this particular example, Wes, and I don't want to bore a lot of the listeners, but do you have multiple sources of data you're connecting to here then, right? You have the Business Central, and then you would also have something must be going for your industry ratio then?
Yeah. So in this particular in an actual live instance, you'd probably want to connect this to ASAE or GuideStar, or connect it to wherever you're keeping your industry metrics. For this demonstration, from a technical perspective, I just created a table and input those industry ratios, and I just brought that in. So it's I just manually put in some data to be part of the data model. But if you're actually building this for a client or yourself, you would integrate it in with the most recent data. You can use maybe a script to go out and get that data. Or maybe there's a workbook somewhere or some cloud file that has all that data on it.
Yeah. I think part of the reason I asked that is because I know some of the dashboard information that I've built in Power BI. What I love about BI is that I can be directly linked to, you could be directly linked to a website and get information. And you can also be linked to 1, 2, 3, 4 different Excel files that are containing information that might be sitting on OneDrive and can be updated by multiple users at the same time. So it's kind of a living, breathing file. And then we can also be direct linked into a system like Business Central and pull together all those different pieces to really make something really unique. And I think that's why I really like Power BI, because you can do that, whereas you can't necessarily do that if it's an out-of-the-box accounting system, or if you're just trying to do everything in Excel, it becomes very manual. So I think that's one of the nicest things that has been invented.
I'm in agreement with you there. Yeah, I mean, you can build out pretty neat dashboards in your accounting systems, and there's a lot of value in there. But with a tool like Power BI, when you actually get into building it, you can pretty much make reality whatever you want it to be. Grab data from every single file type under the sun. Then you have a place where you model everything together, make all these relationships, and you can there's Power Query there's a feature called Power Query in Power BI, which is also in Excel. But it allows you to transform data, filter off data, change data. It allows you to scrub the data that you're bringing in a programmatic way without actually knowing programming. So it's really cool and really powerful. And yeah, we honestly, Jeff, if we had an infinite time, we could probably spend 3 hours on this talking about all the cool stuff you can do with Power BI and Power Query. But we have folks on the call who probably would
Go nuts,
probably want to move on to other things after a little while.
Yeah. I can kind of give another example of how Power BI is really cool in this instance too. Is like if you're thinking like again, I'm going to use an example of somewhere where we've done this. It's not necessarily not private, but if you're like think of a dentist that maybe gets to the 10th of the month and they're thinking, what's the revenue? What's my revenue going to be for the rest of this month if I get no other cases coming in? They can take a database table that has all of their different procedures and rates, and then they can join that to a database table that has pretty much their calendar and all the procedures that are booked for the year. Do some math when you join those and say, if you have nobody else sign up for anything else this month, you're going to have X dollars of revenue. And so another good example of how a tool like Power BI or something can really take those disconnected systems and make something knowledgeable out of them. So
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be an awesome use case. Yeah, you have maybe like a database, like a SQL server that has here's a listing of all the stuff we have scheduled out for the week and all the different codes that we plan on, charging.
mhm.
And then you just join that to a table that has all those codes in it and what the dollar amount you usually bill on them. Then you come up with an estimated revenue for the week or the month or
Yep.
whatever, however far you schedule out. So,
Yeah.
um, yep.
And I would just say too, like one of the really nice things about using like a Microsoft Power BI is it's so easily accessible by so many of us. It's part of the Microsoft suite. I know it can be, I know there's different things with licensing or whatever, but one thing that's really nice is that it can be, it can be built somewhere different than your organization even, but it can be put onto like inside your guys, like a subscription that's shared for an organization too. So like once it's built, it can be moved to like to network, and then it can be maintained internally too. So that's really a nice feature because Microsoft is obviously so far reaching, and it pretty much 97% made up fact there. Percent of us use Microsoft. It's so easily accessible.
Absolutely. And I think don't quote me on this. I'm pretty sure this is the case though. If you're just using it for yourself, if you just download Power BI desktop and just kind of use it for like on your computer, I think it's free. I think it's subscription free. I think it's when you start wanting to like share it, like use this service I have up here and deploy it out to the cloud and share reports. I
Yeah.
think that's where the subscription comes in. But if you're just like using it for your own, like if you're a controller or if you're a CFO or something like that, and you just want to build this model and just use it for yourself, I think Power BI is subscription free. There's like a free version of it that you can just build everything you want. Don't
Yeah.
quote me on that, but yeah.
And also, like, I know there's a lot of folks that have self-learned a tool like Power BI because the internet is just rich with resources, obviously. And, one of the first times I got introduced to Power BI, there was just a free online Microsoft course. You'd sign up, you'd watch it, and do a little bit of work, and you can really learn a long ways to become very knowledgeable with it for free, which is cool.
Yeah, you go on YouTube, there's like tens of thousands of videos about Power BI. And one of the things nowadays that you have that we didn't have necessarily a few years ago, like I want to avoid getting too deep in the weeds, but I think this is important to mention, and then maybe we can open the floor for questions.
Yeah.
So if you want to get into building something within Power BI, like I said before, it uses a formula language called DAX. So DAX expressions to calculate stuff, which can sometimes get a little bit technical. But the thing is using Microsoft Copilot, you can go into Microsoft Copilot and say, hey, can you write me some DAX expressions for this thing I want to do? And it'll spit you out some DAX code that you can pretty much just copy paste into your data model in Power BI, and you can just modify the columns and the names to be whatever fits your data model. But it's easier than ever. I'm trying to say it's easier than ever through the power of AI and Copilot to
Yeah.
get started in Power BI.
Yeah, I think some of the most successful sort of implementations we've done with like a Power BI type example is literally you kind of sit down on like almost at a whiteboard or a blank piece of paper or something, and you just get out the old pen and pencil and you kind of draw out, I kind of need to know these things and I kind of want it to look like that. And then what's really cool is that from there we can take it and basically turn that into reality. But it's really a really efficient way of doing it because you kind of know, like, it kind of takes it out of the brain and puts it onto pen and paper and then onto the screen as well. So that's a fun way to go about doing it. So
Yeah, whiteboarding is something that I feel like sometimes personally personally I don't see it as much as I used to, but I feel like whiteboarding is really important. It's a good practice to stick with,
yep.
even though it's in my realm, it's kind of fallen out of popularity.
Right.
But
Feels like an old way of getting out a marker or pen, but it's a good first start. So,
cool.
all right. Yeah. Yeah. I know we got about 10 minutes left here or so, and I can put a slide back up on the screen here, Wes, if you want to change places with me. Assuming I can do that here. But I think, Brandy, I don't know if we have any kind of questions that have come in or not, but we'll go ahead and put our contact information up there on the screen for anybody has questions or things for Wes or I. Those are our contact information, but I know that there's probably some questions out there and we'd
Yep.
love
And
to
I
be
think
able
we
to help
just
answer
had
them.
a CPE poll pop up, so make sure you answer that. And thank you. I mean, and one of the things that I will say, I'm not big into doing the dashboards and stuff on my side of my profession, but the time savings that this can bring to individuals when they're wanting to analyze that data. The time commitment up front is a little bit, but the time savings afterwards has got to be huge.
Yeah.
So I'll just ask a few questions that we had. First one, so how is data analytics differing from AI? How are the two different?
That's a really good question. I don't know, Wes, if you want to comment on that, I'm happy to too, but um, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think they are related in some way. They're kind of technically different disciplines. So AI kind of relies more on uh, trained data models, kind of running algorithms to discover trends and kind of think almost like a way a human would to determine these things. In my opinion, artificial intelligence AI is just kind of like a subset, like practice of a broader data analytics kind of umbrella. That's my opinion, though, which may maybe you'll agree with it, maybe not, Jeff, but I'll pass it off to you.
No, yeah, I absolutely, agree with you on that one. I really think that this is I've run across a lot of folks actually that say, "Well, we'll just use AI for that." I'm like, not really what AI is. Like, it's important in the big data world to know that there's a difference between AI and data analytics. I think data analytics is a lot of times we're using data that already exists basically to try to gain some sort of a trend or an insight from it versus AI, where we're, like you said, Wes, putting in some sort of algorithm or logic, and we're replacing human thinking with machine thinking to help kind of develop the solution. So I think one has people, one doesn't. Maybe that's, oversimplifying things, but it's a good question. And a lot of people, I think, just tend to maybe not quite get that yet. But yeah.
So you talked a little bit over the presentation about how someone could possibly build a dashboard on their own with some of the tools that are out there. But is it better to just outsource organizations' data analytic needs?
Well, I'll go ahead and answer that first, and Wes, you chime on too, obviously. But it's like most of those gray area questions in the world, right? It depends, right? Um, I I kind of personally think the answer is likely yes. A lot of times, time constraints and budget constraints make it really hard to hire a business intelligence analyst or a data scientist if needed. So I think if you know what you want, can make sense a lot of times, and you might pay for someone to come in and help you do that first round, and then they help turn that over, and you get educated on it. For me, that's what I like to do when I work with consultant. I like to learn it, and then I like to be able to run with it after that, so I'm not forever dependent. But yeah, if you're just starting out and you need the help, that's a great way to go. And there's lots of places that can help do it.
Yep.
Wes?
My opinion is pretty much the same as yours, Jeff. I agree with you there. And really, it depends on kind of what your scale of needs are. Like if you have like significant, if you think like you have enough work to keep like a BI person, a business intelligence person, like busy all the time, maybe worthwhile to make a hire. That way you have, someone on full time who can be deployed across multiple things. But if you're just getting started, you may want to get someone in on the outside to come in, get something started for you all, and then from there you can decide, do you continue to outsource or do you bring on someone full time to kind of take the ball from there?
Yeah.
Good, thank you. So another question, if data analytics based on this presentation is so easy to do, why are so many organizations struggling to implement doing data analytics at their organization?
What are you seeing out there, Wes?
I think a lot of it is sometimes it's problems with systems, really. So a lot of organizations, like I shouldn't say a lot. I should just say some. Some organizations, they talk about like, hey, we want to do data analytics. That's super. But the thing is the systems that they currently have may not necessarily they have to do some pre-work like with some of their systems to make sure their systems are aligned to support a proper data model. So I mean, I'm trying to come up with a great example, but for some reason the words escape me. Just put it this way: if your source systems just aren't set up to do proper, data, like getting data out in a clean way, or maybe you have a convoluted mess of systems and nothing is your processes are maybe messed up. You may need to fix your processes and things before you get into data analytics, essentially, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's, I do a lot of work with, troubled type organizations. And so, I come in there and work with them and, like we haven't seen a statement of financial position in 9, 10 months, but we want a dashboard. Like, I
Mm.
kind of wonder about the quality of our underlying data at this point. And so we do see that happen where data quality becomes an issue sometimes. Um, one of my biggest pet peeves actually is when we come in like you can, help somebody put together something on a dashboard like, we don't trust it.
Mm.
Why not? Is it because you don't trust technology or is it because we got a data integrity problem? But we'll get that something that can't be true, and then we start looking further and like kind of is. So um that's always kind of fun too to maybe prove them wrong. But yeah, that's just me.
Yep. It's kind of this kind of has a harsh tone, but sometimes it's like garbage in, garbage out. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's like if your data isn't very good, you can't build good dashboards on it.
it's true.
So
So I know you mentioned a few times in this, we got Power BI, Excel, things like that. What are some other commonly used tools that you see organizations using for data and dashboards and things like that?
Yeah. Personally, I've used Power BI. I use Excel a lot. Excel, I don't want to make sure it's really clear to everybody that, whatever the accounting system has in it or Power BI, those are not even close to the full gamut of options for being able to use data analytics tools. But Excel is a very common one. I've personally used Tableau before. They were pretty early to the game. They were usually pretty expensive, and obviously it's not as widely used as Microsoft Suite, but those are kind of what I'm familiar with. Wes, I know you've used a few other things that are unique too.
yeah, I mean, I've not used Tableau. I've heard from what I've heard about Tableau, it's pretty similar. It does a similar-ish thing to
Hmm.
Power BI. That's really the only thing I know about it. Um, uh, Power BI is real common, like we just talked about. Excel is real common. One of the things that I'll use occasionally, this is more for data cleanup and processing, but I'll use like Python. So Python is a very popular programming language. I'm not I'm not incredibly good at it, But it's really a nice and clean way to, ingest data, clean up data. And they even have some code packages that you can use to create your own like dashboards in Python. I don't do that, but you can if you want to. The other thing is if an organization or a system that your organization that you're working with has, if they have a SQL Server, SQL Server is a classic. I think the SQL query language has been around. We're recording this, so maybe I'll seem incorrect when we go back and watch this. But I want to say like back in the 70s or around that time, that's when SQL as a programming as a query language came about, and it's still being used today. And the reason is if you know it, it's really super simple, it's super powerful, and it works. It works really quickly to analyze a lot of data at once if you have a large data set. So SQL is really popular. Python's really popular. All that stuff is real good.
But if you're less techie like me, Power BI and Excel are great.
We have one final question. So how do you convert people who use data analytic tools, especially those that are negative with technology?
So I learned years ago, there's this term that I love to say, it's called proof of concept. And many times once somebody sees it, they're a believer. And it's hard to explain something. It's kind of a trust me, right? Trust me, this can work, until they actually can see that it does. And I think that goes a long ways of putting something in front of somebody.
Yeah, it's really easy to stay kind of negative on something if all of your experiences so far have been, negative, or you haven't ever seen something before. But like what you were saying, Jeff, I remember the first time when I got into Power BI and I built out like all these DAX formulas in Power BI and built in all these like relationships and stuff like that. And my feeling was like this is like the coolest thing ever. And once you have that feeling of like you realize the power of something, then you're like, "Oh, I got to learn everything about it." And then you start applying it into more, parts of your organization. And then you really become a believer. And before you know it,
Yeah.
you become a nerd in whatever it is we're talking about. Which, by the way, not only in Power BI, but I also felt that the first time I wrote a script in Python and did my first SQL query. So once you learn a tool, you start having all these like ideas pop in your brain about like, hey, how can I use this better?
Mm.
So I think just getting them started and giving them that first positive experience, make them a believer, then they can kind of take it from there.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Jeff and Wes. I know our time is up. Thank you to everybody for joining us today. We will be emailing out a recording of this presentation along with the slide deck probably tomorrow. And our contact information will also be in that email. So if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to either one of us. Stay tuned for next quarter. We're going to be bringing back some useful information from the National AICPA Nonprofit Conference to share with you. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.